Welcome to the November 30th Eclipse OpenJ9 community call. As always, if you're joining, please add your name and an affiliation to the list of attendees. It gives us an idea of who regularly attends. Okay, we've got our agenda before us. It looks like it usually does. If there's something you want to add to this, feel free to jump in now and we'll get it added into the agenda, or you can add it yourself in the any other business section at the end. Or as we get to the relevant section, chime in and we'll go from there. So I'll pause if somebody wants to bring up a topic right off the bat. We don't have a lightning talk scheduled right now. If you would like to give one, reach out to me, we'll get something set up. And let's take a look at the recent end user issues that have come in. There's a discussion around some of the messages that we put out around the core dump patterns.
Yeah, so a PR was just open for that. I was just commenting on it. So we're working on that one.
What was the proposal here?
The proposal is, I think Service has been telling people to change the core pattern to output the core in the current directory, like it used to work. The updated proposal is to continue using the tools that the OSs provide, but be aware that those tools could truncate the core. So you want to change the settings so the core doesn't get truncated. And then the cores are still, you can still find the cores, you just have to go look where these programs put them. So basically to understand what these tools are doing on the various OSs and get the cores from the appropriate places.
They won't have the naming pattern then?
They won't have the naming pattern, but that's not really necessary is the argument.
Has Service weighed in on this?
I think this is Service.
Okay, because I know historically.
Scroll back a bit. Did Stephen Helberg comment on this? I can't remember. There was also an email about this where I think some people weighed in. So yeah, so Stephen Helberg weighed in.
Because I know historically we have used the naming convention to detect cases where we've been given inconsistent data. It's made it much easier to tell that the core files, the Java cores, and the snap traces don't line up. If Service is okay with this change, then they're the ones who are going to be primarily affected by it.
Yeah, they seem to be on board with it. But I mean, it's we're not really changing anything. We're changing some output of some messages to suggest that you can get, if you're using the OS tools, you can still go get the core. And that you may have to change the default settings. Apparently up to some version, it truncated the core file at 2 gig. And then if you have a later version, it doesn't truncate at 2 gig anymore. It truncates at some bigger size, like 32 gig. But you might want to go change those settings so your core doesn't get truncated. We're not ruling out changing the core pattern. You could still do that if you want. It's just more information in the messages that we output when the VM doesn't find the core.
And the rest of these are older. Is there any that need discussion today? Then we'll jump back to the agenda here. And we're at our roadmap and direction section. Did the Semru builds for AR64 get published?
They did not, and they're still delayed. I removed the date that we used to have in there, and I will just keep an eye on it and see when they get delivered.
Then for 036, looks like we're down to 3 issues. No blockers, which is a great place to be. The branches happened.
I don't know. Is Keith, you on the call? There was one PR that I left in the milestone
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm here. Sorry, I can have a look at that
I'm just
milestone.
wondering if you think it could resolve this week. If it could resolve this week, we could think about putting it in. Otherwise, we should just move that out of the milestone.
You're talking about the Java core enhancements, or
Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, I haven't had really a lot of time to look at that lately. I
Yeah,
don't
so
think
I'm,
there's
I'm
anything.
not I'm not saying it needs to go in. I'm just saying if you think it won't go in, we can move it out of the milestone.
Okay. Probably, I don't know that there's a rush for this one, so probably safer to move it out.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks. And I see one of our other issues is already moved out, so we're now down to 2 issues. And I suspect that core one for Mac version 13 is not going to get resolved this week. So it'll probably have to move out as well.
All right, but it sounds like we're in a pretty reasonable place for 8, 11, and 17 then.
As far as I know.
It's good to hear. We'll skip over 037. Talk about Java 19 then. Just a reminder that if you are putting fixes into the mainline right now for Java 19, please label those PRs with the backport candidate and the JDK 19 labels, so that we know to pick them up later if we do a 036 dot whatever release for Java 19.
I would say so far that's not being done. I expect what we'll have to do is look at all the PRs that have gone in since we did the branch, and when we're ready, we'll look at all the PRs and go through them and see what we need. But please do label them; that'll make it easier.
Why don't we talk about Loom and Panama, and then we'll come back and look at the milestone plan. Jack, are you on the call? Do you have an update on where Loom is at?
Yes, Dan. So for Loom, currently I am working with Daryl to look at the issue that we're seeing with multiple stress tests where there is a invalid return address. JIT team have identified the issue as when they were reclaiming the code cache for JIT. They're not scanning all of the continuation stacks, which may be still referencing the old compiled code. And we're working on updating the reclaim code to scan for all the continuation stack as well. I think Daryl have a prototype. I also had a prototype, but mine is still seeing the same error, so I'm still debugging exactly what is going on my side. I'll leave it to Daryl if you have any update on his work.
Yeah, so far the testing with the fix that I put in seems to be working. I haven't seen the problem since started using it, so that's a good sign. Depending on how, I know there was a bit of a discussion in that issue last night. It might be just for the Java 19 release. It might be okay if we just fixed it topically, the way that's been discussed in that issue, and then work on a stack iterator for all Java threads for future uses. If there aren't other, I don't want you to be too distracted by a problem that we have other ways of fixing. So if your time is better spent elsewhere on Loom, then maybe that's what you should focus on for Java 19.
No, thanks, Daryl. I'll revise my change set just to confirm that I'm not in a weird bug, and then I guess we can go with whatever you have prototype. In terms of GC, I know Lynn is currently looking at a issue with concurrent scavenger. Otherwise, from what I understand, there is still discussion on metronome that Alec have been looking into. I don't know if they have concluded or not. But otherwise, that's it in terms of the failures. And we have one more failure with the virtual thread list that currently we're actively resolving.
So the tests that we talked about last week that were excluded and we haven't been running, those are believed to be addressed by either the PRs we have in progress or have been re-included?
Yes. The ones excluded have been re-enabled except for the few stress tests that Darrow is currently working to resolve, and I don't think there is any more tests that will be re-enabled except for the ones that we excluded primarily due to those reasons.
Okay. Alex, was there anything you wanted to call out around the Metrodome conversation?
So far, the things look like we don't need to do anything about this double barrier scenario. I know it's still on the table, but I think if you can remove it from now, if we figure it out, then I'll, I guess, mention it again. We really need it. As Jack said, the most important thing is this crash in concurrent scavenger that Lynn is looking currently now, and we are also discussing some future enhancements performance-wise. Namely, we're trying to reduce or completely remove the scanning of the continuation list, which I suspect may be a very large list because there's anyway, so there's some discussion in background, but nothing for this release.
Right, so from a GC point of view, besides the crash that Lynn's investigating, you feel like we're in a good state for this?
I believe so, yes.
Good to hear. Just while we're talking about this, Daryl, apart from this JIT return address failure, do you believe that the JIT is in a good state for the Loom?
Yeah, there's one issue still that needs to be investigated that haven't investigated yet. So I need to swap that one into my head and see what progress we can make. But other than that, yeah, we're in pretty good shape.
Cheng, in terms of Panama.
So can you hear me, Dan?
Yes.
Okay. So far we already fixed all the variable structure code issues. So all PRs related get merged. So in terms of JIT side, there's only one issue out there. OpenJDKMS handler, they're still investigating problem. They already successfully connected JIT logs. They try to compare the problematic methods with the successful run to try to figure out the root cause. So the investigation is still ongoing. And that's everything on my side.
So if I understood that correctly, the thunk issues are resolved?
Yep, exactly. There's including the Vim, there is no Vim issues out there.
Okay, so it sounds like it's just these two issues then that we're still chasing?
Right.
So it sounds like we're in a pretty good shape there for Panama as well then.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good to hear. So if we pull up the milestone plan, you see we've got the 18 items here. And it looks like most of these are assigned out at this point. Is there anything in this list that we're concerned about or worried it's not getting the attention that it needs right now?
There's the design and implementation of foreign linker API upcall. Is that now completed, or?
I think that's when we can move out.
Yeah, based on that, we already clean everything out there. We can probably safely close it. The only thing left to is just something issues. So
I mean, we
there's
may
nothing else.
we may want to keep it open because I know there was some minor modifications in JDK 20.
Maybe we could have a new issue for 20 just to make it less confusing.
Okay, yeah. In that case, we can close this.
So let's close. Is there anything else in this list that we're concerned about? What I'm hearing right now is that we believe that with the things we've been investigating and the pieces we have, that most of these things should be resolved in the near future. Is that an accurate assessment?
Assuming some of these are dupes.
Yeah, so for the tests that fail on a consistent basis, there's someone investigating it, and we either have a fix or we're working towards determining the problem. There's a few issues here where we haven't reproduced them in over a couple weeks. For those ones, we'll be looking towards to either reproducing them or just closing them.
And even right now, just knowing that they haven't been seen in a couple of weeks, they could be moved out, because if they haven't been seen in a couple of weeks, I don't think they're going to block the release.
Agreed, that would be good to get an accurate picture of what we're still seeing versus things that have, potentially been rectified or worked around by changes that have gone in. Right, so that's a more positive update on Java 19 than we've had. Probably too early still to start talking about dates for branches or releases on this.
I was thinking that there's going to be 1902 released in January, so we would come out after that on top of 1902. Probably obvious, but just in case. You put the 0 in there, it's 1902, 19.0. Yeah.
It's a good place to be. All right, so if that moves us on from our release updates, seeing who do we have, I don't see any of the usual adopt folk on, so we'll skip that update. Adam, is there an update on the infrastructure? Actually, I don't see Adam either, so skip over that. I see Marius on the call. No, I don't, so we'll skip the JIT server update. Next microJIT meeting is December the 1st. Toby, do you have an update on the CRIU support?
Yeah, so we're looking towards enabling it in Headstream. So I've gone through all the tests. There's basically two types of failures that are currently affecting the stability of tests. One of them is that if CRU has trouble reacquiring the same thread IDs, then it fails to restore. So that's probably the most common failure. So I have a PR that's going to detect these cases and not fail because of them. There's nothing you can do about this. This is an inherent issue with doing checkpoint restore and then non-container environments, which most of the CRU tests run in. So the test will be modified to be more resilient to these. The other failure is they fall into the category of file system issues. So every once in a while, some file will just be missing, and we'll get a failure because of that. Again, I'm not sure there's anything we can do about those. After running a grinder, they happen. I'm seeing them one every 100 runs. So I think that's kind of small enough that we can tolerate, but I'm not sure what else we can do to solve those issues. So again,
Is there particular kinds of files that are disappearing?
So the ones I'm seeing they tend to be like the test scripts. So there's a CRU script that runs the Java command and then runs the restore command after. So I see failures where it just can't find that file, and it's intermittent.
So it's not files associated with the VM itself, it's files associated with the test material.
Yeah. So again, so the purpose of this exercise is just to make sure that the tests can be reliable, because if the tests aren't reliable, then it's going to be an issue. So again, with the new changes, it's roughly 1 in 100. I'm going to take another pass to see if we can make it more reliable, but I suspect that's kind of the ratio we'll be looking at. There is also a PR in the works to remove our dependency on CRU for build machines. So I think will address some of the other concerns we had previously. So yeah, those are the major updates.
Did the November early access build happen?
Yeah, so we did the initial version. There was an issue with some of the newer security changes that emerged earlier, I think late October or early November. So we had to back those changes out and do a respin of the November EA, and that one's already out. So if you go to the Summer 17 EA releases page, you can find both those builds.
Daryl, is there an update on the Mac M1 work?
Nothing this week, no.
And Erwin, is there something you want to discuss with the option deprecation behavior change process?
Yeah, it's more actually to I guess bring it up in the community. So the idea, the specific context here is the XJIT XAOT options, where we can now change the default behavior, and then Service was saying how it would be good to just have that change be default in a future release. And then that discussion, the comment by Daryl, is what triggered sort of this bullet point in the agenda, where I figured maybe it's probably a good idea to have, instead of us, the JIT, being like, all right, we're gonna do some kind of messaging and whatnot. I figured maybe it's better to have a more general process for what we do, like we as an OpenJ9 do, when there's either an option that's being deprecated or some kind of front-end behavior that changes. So I was thinking of having a meeting at some point this week or next. I was gonna, invite Peter and Keith, Daryl, myself, but I figured it's worth bringing it up in case anyone else wants to join. Just let me know, and I'll try and schedule a meeting so we can figure out what a good process is for all the components.
Yeah, Erwin, I'm happy to join that as well.
Okay.
Believe we've historically had some processes this, and Pete probably has a better recollection of what those are. But we may not have to break new ground here. We may have some things we can build on top of.
Yeah, that probably makes sense. I just wanted to have it so that we have a good way of doing it rather than, a ad hoc approach. So if there is a process that makes life simpler too. But yeah, that's it for me.
The really old process was supposed to be deprecated for 2 releases. I don't know that we have to follow that anymore. It should be deprecated for at least one version of Java if we're going to change behavior.
Yeah, and I guess now there's also subtleties about the long-term release versus the 6-month releases too, right? So
yeah, well, OpenJDK is not deprecating something for the next long-term release. They're deprecating things in a short-term release and then removing it in the following short-term release. So by the time you get to the next long-term release, there could be all sorts of changes from the previous long-term release. So given that behavior, I think we could do the same.
Yeah, makes sense. I'll schedule a meeting just so we can at least document it, and then we, based on what you guys think.
Yeah, so we've missed the opportunity to do anything for 19, but if you were able to do something for 20, then you could make the change in behavior in 21.
Sounds like we have some next steps there. Is there any other business we want to tackle this week? And thank you, everybody, and we'll hold the next one of these calls on December the 6th.
Thanks.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.